my colleague, Dr. Thiankolu, to continue from.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
My Lord, I request that the Mutembei is to run some
Sorry?
project.
Sorry?
I request the court assistant to project something I want to show them. The did run and the setup. Oh, it's on our screen, my Lord.
Where did it come from?
It's part of my presentation, my Lord. They started my clock, my Lord, before I even introduced myself.
All right. Okay.
My Lord, I've been constrained to fundamentally alter my presentation in view of...
Just introduce yourself first for the sake of the record.
For the record, my Lord, my name is Muthomi Thiankolu, representing...
Is it Dr. or Muthomi Thiankolu?
The actual name, my Lord, is Muthomi Thiankolu.
Okay.
It is an element of vanity to say I'm Dr. So-and-so or Professor so-and-so.
I heard that reference earlier. That's why I wanted to confirm.
Yes, my Lord.
Okay.
Now, my Lord, I only mentioned two things in my presentation. One is what I believe should be the overarching questions that should bother you after you listen to all these arguments and counter-arguments. And I suggest those questions are as follows. Number one, your decision, whichever way it will go, you should ask yourself, what type of precedent will it create? Number two, what scheme of incentives will your decision either to uphold the High Court or to reverse the judgment set up? Question number three, which is related, my Lord, is how are future presidents of the Republic of Kenya likely to treat the Constitution if you allow this illegal enterprise and give it judicial imprimatur? How are future politicians and political elites likely to handle our Constitution if you reverse the High Court judgment? Of course, my Lord, I don't know the answers to those questions, but there is a court of wise men and women. I truly trust that the court has the capacity to get the correct answers. The other part of the second part, my Lord, and before I go to the second part, there is a small matter that just crossed my mind. There was a big story about Wikipedia. I can tell you without fear of contradiction, my Lord, that the definitions in Wikipedia tally with those in the Black's Law Dictionary and those in the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary. So it doesn't matter anyway whether the source was Wikipedia. My secondly, my Lord, is what is on our screen, and I would invite our staff to run the slides as I speak. On that screen is a monster, which is an artistic depiction of a creature from Greek legend in antiquity called the Hydra of Lana. This monster, my Lord, was so virulent, so venomous, that its scent alone could kill from a long distance. It was created by one of the Greek goddesses to annihilate a hero called Heracles. And killing this monster, I don't know why they are not running the other slides, my Lord, was one of the 12 labors of a gentleman called Heracles. The challenge, my Lord, with killing this monster was that it had about 10 heads, and for each decapitated head, it immediately grew 2 extra heads. Now, this gentleman was asked to kill it. My Lord, what I'm trying to say is that the Hydra of Lena has been roaming our land since the 12th of August 1897. When this monster came, some of our beloved brothers and sisters, in their wisdom or lack of it, thought it would make a fantastic pet and therefore believed it should be nurtured. Some of our forebearers, of course, did not share that view, and they rose to protest. They include Mekatilili Wamenza, they include Koitalel Arab Samoy, they include Eden Kimathi, and we could count and count if we had the time, my Lord. To cut a long story, my Lord, this monster ate our freedom. We were colonized. It ate our dignity. It ate our rights. And we were tenants of the crown in our own land. And basically, it ate every fabric of our socio, economic, and political identity. We sent our best brains to Lancaster House in London between 1960 and 1963, and their singular task, my Lord, was to design a sword for slaying that monster. That sword, my Lord, was the Independence Constitution. This magical sword was kept under the custody of the judiciary on the understanding that judges sworn to deploy this sword without fear or favor would deploy it whenever the Constitution was threatened with a breach. The people who wanted the Hydra to drive, my Lord, embarked on an enterprise to make the sword ineffective. They were hitting it against a granite rock so that the sword would be blunt 38 times through 38 IPA amendments. At the end of the day, because, my Lord, I'm just brushing through things, given how the court has allocated our time, Kenyans kept running to the judiciary. Kamau Kuria ran to the court saying the monster had swallowed his right to travel and liberty. He was told by the courts the passport belonged to the president. Professor Maina Wakenyeti ran to the judiciary to defend his academic freedom, and instead of deploying the sword, the judiciary dropped the sword. I can go on and on, my Lord. Anarita Karemi Njeru, Gitobu Imanyara, James Orengo himself, I've seen Dr. Kaminwa. All these people, I could count them until the cows come home. And they kept running to the judiciary, asking the judiciary, please deploy the sword. The monster is about to devour me. And on most of the occasions, because I'm cutting the story, my Lord, the various judges, without mentioning their names, invariably trembled and dropped the sword. Before 2010, there were a few judges who, although the sword had been made blunt through IPA amendment, they had the presence of mind and courage to deploy it. One of them was Chief Justice Madan, sitting in that bench called Kidhungori versus Republic, with Justice Gishero and with Justice Aganyanya. And they slew that monster, even using the blunt sword. The challenge before you, my Lord, because I can't now present as I had intended given how time has been reallocated, as you ask yourself those questions I began with, Kenyans are watching your decision, not for its intellectual depth, not for its lexicon and how you use the language of the law. What Kenyans are watching is, will the Court of Appeal drop the sword? If you drop the sword, my lords and my ladies, we have been there before. When the courts dropped the sword of the Constitution, were denial torture chambers, were detentions without trial, we had sedition laws. It may sound, my Lord, like I'm exaggerating, but the whole thing began in small bits. This is an amendment. I beseech you, my Lord, and your court, and pray for you and your colleagues, that just like Madan CJ, even nearing his retirement, old and frail, you will have the courage, the presence of mind, fidelity to your oath of office, and that you will deploy the sword and slay this monster, this Hydra called the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill, the year 2020, otherwise known as BBI. Thank you, my lords.
Thank you, Mr. Thiankolu. Counsel, introduce yourself, please. Your time is ticking.
Good afternoon, your lordships and my ladies.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for the opportunity you've given us to expedite our case. Despite the short time, I believe that justice will be done. On May...
Just your name first.
Sorry, your lordship. My name is Morara Omoke. Also has been referred to as the 76th respondent and the petitioner in E416, also advocate of the High Court. Your lordships, when the judgment was delivered by the Superior Court, there was an outpouring of joy all across our nation. And there were a number of reasons why our people were celebrating. One of those reasons was the finding of the Superior Court that whenever we have a referendum in our nation, there should be a nationwide voter registration exercise. Secondly, that we must always have a multi-choice referendum. Those are not findings that were not within the Constitution. I will be able to show you in a minute that all those findings are well anchored in the Constitution, and the finding that was made by the Superior Court was merely a restatement of what the Constitution provides. So I will begin with the requirement for voter registration. We have discussed at length multiple cases on public participation. From Gakuru, we've talked about the BAT case. We've talked about all those cases providing the principles, setting the standard for public participation. And that is one of the reasons why we must have a voter